There is a saying in Malaysia, in Malay, which goes, tak kenal maka tak cinta, which means they who you do not know, you cannot love. And that is the basis of how ASEAN has engaged and approached its relationships this year. Of course, next year with the Philippines taking over, prickly issues like the South China Sea, the Nine Dutch Dash Line will all become issues to the fore. But we hope continuous dialogue can continue to ensure that engagement happens and peace prevails within the region.
Let's now invite Danial Rahman, who is CEO, Asian Strategy and Leadership Institute, for your thoughts on what the Global South really means. What do you think? I mean, the multipolar versus divided world, and most importantly, what can developing emerging countries do to vocalize and to have better consensus?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, CCG, for the invite. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'll focus my remarks on the ASEAN experience, which hasn't been spoken much about this day. I did a quick count. All of you have valiantly sat through 56 speakers prior to me. I'm number 57, and I must say I've been enjoying it tremendously. ASEAN is a vibrant nation, 700 million people, youthful population, and like even for me, I'm a very proud child of a Matni ethnicity family. Very proudly also wearing a Malaysian batik to represent. This year, under Malaysia's chairmanship of ASEAN 2025, we have seen many layers of progress and the growth of Global South from this part of the world. Um, During the first ASEAN summit earlier this year, ASEAN-led architecture has seen Timor-Leste join. Ms. He Wen-ping mentioned this earlier. There was the first ever ASEAN-China GCC summit. Then there was the Thailand-Cambodia peace accords, bit shifting the last few days. But that also then signaled to the US for President Trump to come down. And of course, remember earlier, even before that, President Xi was in Malaysia. In addition to that, as also mentioned earlier, there have been economic upgrades. For example, the ATIGA 3.0, ASEAN as a whole, the ASEAN China FTA 3.0 upgrade, and within ASEAN, you've got the Digital Economy Frameworks Agreement, as well as the ASEAN Power Grid. So many things are happening, and ASEAN has been accused of the past of being very sleepy, kind of slow, not yet fulfilled its potential. But what we've seen in 2025, in the back of these discussions about multipolarity and unipolarity, ASEAN stepping to the fore. And as someone who's been very critical of ASEAN in the past, I'm quite proud of it. So this brings us to the question: is it multipolarity or division, or as Mr. Emerson has said, is it a stagnant order, which I find quite compelling? I think it's a little bit of everything, right? In ASEAN, what we see is pragmatic multipolarity, or my discussions with my global young leaders here representing, they call it poly alignment. Just now I was talking to Pascal, he talked about relational polarity. So many terms and being thrown about. But the reality is the proof is in the pudding. It's not about choosing sides, we're engaging with everybody. At the ASEAN level, we've engaged with China collectively, but as sovereign nations, each country has discussed with America their approach to tariffs and what treatments are needed and what concessions are needed and what can be given back. So you've got unity, multipolarity at the ASEAN level and in our expression to the world, but you've also got individual sovereignty and agency at the individual ASEAN country level. Now, there is a saying there is a saying in Malaysia, in Malay, which goes, tak kenal maka tak cinta, which means they who you do not know, you cannot love. And that is the basis of how ASEAN has engaged and approached its relationships this year. Of course, next year with the Philippines taking over, prickly issues like the South China Sea, the Nine Dutch Dash Line will all become issues to the fore. But we hope continuous dialogue can continue to ensure that engagement happens and peace prevails within the region. Now, this statement also has another side to it. Dah kenal tergila-gila, which means once you know somebody and you know them too well, you might go crazy. Bit of like an obsessive relationship. Therefore, it's really important in this future order, whatever it might be, that we do not overcommit, but where strategic engagement does not become strategic dependency. The last question I'd like to ask is this: how do we define power or what polarity means, right? And I think that's what's been thrown about. Some have said it's GDP, some it's military power, some it's diplomatic power. But how about this? Beyond all these discussions, we must remember it is the people on the ground who matter. And I think that's one part of this conversation we haven't had maybe time enough to speak about this today is what does it all mean for the citizens of ASEAN and the global south? Um, it should also be about which countries are able to lift others from poverty, to bring about innovation that enriches the society, to ensure that there's equal wealth distribution. And for me, the power that will lead in this multipolar world will be the nation that's able to do that and to give that. The last point is this: how does this come about? And I believe it's leadership, right? It's ultimately the leaders who are put into power by the people who inherit power from the incumbents that ensure how the future turns out, whether it's one of war or one of collective prosperity, depends on the kind of leadership that we have. And for that note, once again, I'm very proud to have been here in this capacity, but also a few days with the young leaders. So on that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you so much.